Welcome to the broadcast. Let me now introduce my panel this morning. I have with me lawyer and political strategist, that is Kipchumba Karori. I have with me political analyst and communication expert, says Bonowila, and Mark Bichachen, political risk analyst, Dismas Mukua. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, let's begin with the Sunday Standard and with the splash. That is what they are calling Robin Hood taxes, Mpesa and idle land. This is apparently aimed at trying to get more money for the government, for the Big Four agenda, for the Jubilee administration, from the rich people to make sure that the government works for the poor people. That is what they call it, Robin Hood taxes. So mobile money transfers will be targeted, high-value RTGS, airfares, idle land. That is like in Saudi Arabia. Very quickly, what are your views on this? Let me start with you, Dismas.
Well, you know, taxation is supposed to raise revenues for the administration, but you're not supposed to be taxing to prosperity. What the Jubilee administration should be doing is growing the economic cake so that they can increase their taxation levels. So trying to look for every loophole to increase taxation will not work, because the people that are aiming to tax are already carrying a heavy burden on taxation. And instead, what the administration should be doing is spreading that taxation net so that the few rich Kenyans who do not pay tax are able to meet their obligations. For instance, if you want to start taxing farmers and because they are not able to produce, and you have not provided a market for their goods and services, what would you want to force a farmer to go plant tea, coffee, maize, and there's no guaranteed market for their supplies?
All right.
But if there was a guaranteed market and then farmers fail to produce, then you can tax. So, but at the end of the day, all economies that have ever achieved any level of success from taxation, you must make sure that the economy is growing so that you increase your taxation brackets. And it's always said that in Kenya, like most African countries, the very rich, the very wealthy persons never ever get to pay their taxes. Either they engage in tax evasion or avoidance, so they don't get to pay taxes. And they just go to the middle class people who right now have got a very huge burden. And on the same note, if the administration expects people to be very happy to break into a dance and song in terms of paying taxes, then Kenyans should be able to see the fruits of the taxes they pay. Right now, if you walk the streets of Nairobi, the place is in, it's shocking. The levels of corruption are amazing. And it's on record. That of the public service indicated at some stage that up to a third of our budget goes into corruption. If, in fact, we feel those corruption loopholes, maybe they may not need over thinking about taxation.
Mark, missed revenue targets, borrowing spree by the government, flat economic growth. Is this the way to fund that Big Four?
I am quite puzzled by what we mean the economy is not growing. The GDP growth in this country has consistently been above 5%. I know we like being negative as a country, but let's not avoid facts for the benefit of massaging our pessimistic natures. The fact of the matter is the Kenyan economy has grown by 5%, including during the post-election violence of 2007. That should tell you that the economic growth you are talking about is already happening in this country. Secondly, the loopholes of corruption have steadily reduced in this country. And I know things are not perfect, but looking at it from a totally negative perspective is not the way to solve this thing. I agree that we do need to increase our tax bracket, and increasing our tax bracket is actually about including people in the informal sector into the tax regime. That's where the rubber really meets the road. It's actually, the problem is with the extremely upper class and the extremely lower class, because the question is, you have to ask yourself, that a Maasai herding cows in Nairobi with his 50, 60 cows is walking around with 600,000-700,000 shillings. Is he going to be taxed that money? Of course not. And at the same time, you've seen many times when huge corporations are in legal tussles with the KRA because of tax avoidance. So those are the two extremes that we need to deal with.
All
but
right.
also, we put ourselves in quite a pickle when we passed the 2010 Constitution. When we passed the 2010 Constitution, we said education should be a basic right. We said health should be a basic right. Now take a trip to Schengen countries. Schengen countries pay up to 54% tax to be able to meet that health bill, to be able to meet that education bill. The 2010 Constitution was a high tax bill. We need to face that reality, because if you're going to offer universal health care, it's going to cost the government upwards of 100 billion shillings every month. Every year, rather. And if it's going to cost that much, guess where it's going to come from? It's going to come from our pockets. That's the reality of the matter. We cannot avoid it.
But just allow me a moment to buttress a point that is raised, which raises serious issues on economics. I mean, one would be, maybe that's voodoo economics. There's no way the economy would be growing, yet the taxation targets are not being met. If an economy is growing, then it follows that the KRA should be hitting their targets. Right now, KRA says they're not able to hit their targets, they're not able to meet their numbers because the economy is shrinking. Now, that is supposed to be the ideal position. But assuming that the economy is growing and KRA is not collecting as expected, then it means we've got a couple of guys in Kenya who perfected the game of stealing from KRA. They're not paying their taxation. There's no way you would have an economy growing and then KRA is recording poor numbers. That is voodoo economics. It doesn't work anywhere in the world.
Let me just buttress a point. The KRA target was not met last year simply because we had elections, and you remember what happened to our economy. Economic growth, Dismas Mokua, when it says 5%, you cannot imagine a 5% economic growth. And number two, countries like the United States...
But also, Mark, why are you denying a flat economic growth is flat? I mean, if you post 555, that's flat.
Listen, it is...
You can't deny that fact,
listen,
can you?
It is year on year. It is not stagnant. You're not comparing with 1990. When you say 5% growth, it means that the last year's becomes the new 100%. So meaning we had 105% this year. The next year is another 105%. It is additive. It is not stagnant.
Hesbon, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think, if the economy is growing, it only makes sense if the common mwananchi down there is feeling the impact of the economic growth. And if you look at this new tax regime that they're introducing, I don't think it's going to affect the common mwananchi down there, because the common mwananchi does not transfer money through real-time gross settlement, does not transfer large sums of amount of money through the mobile phone. So essentially what you're looking at is a situation where if this is effectively done and enough money is raised from this privileged few, and the money is channeled towards the big four, as articulated by President Uhuru Kenyatta, you're looking at a situation where the growth of the economy will be trickle down there. I don't agree with Mark on the issue of, bringing people in the informal sector into the tax bracket, because I don't think that is something that you can do artificially. I mean, it needs to come naturally. You need to fund enough infrastructure, so much so that even guys in the informal sector now find themselves in the mainstream tax bracket. And you can only do that by funding big infrastructural projects, by funding health, by creating jobs, by expanding the manufacturing sector. And I think you can rest assured that if this is implemented and the money is used judiciously, I think that is bound to work.
Great. All right. Chumba.
I think we need to abridge the tax bridge we have in this country. The gap is too much between the poor people don't pay tax, and the richest people in this country avoid paying tax. That is the first point we need to address. Before even we go to who should pay what, KRA needs to get its act together and make sure that all these people who fall within the tax bracket are taxed. That will in itself help us finance most of these things. But looking at our economy, yes, the economy is growing, but the growth of the economy should directly affect the growth of our tax basket. We should not read a growing economy and a shrinking tax basket. It does not address the economics well. It's as simple as telling us 1 + 1 automatically supposed to be 2. But if it becomes 1 + 1 is 1, we are missing a whole point.
All right.
I think allow me to do some education here.
The other point is this.
Can I please interject? Because what you said is factually wrong. It would be deceiving the country.
Let's listen to him.
When we are talking about funding the big four, it is a nice idea. But we must ask ourselves, between 2010 and to date, even if you just have to do a normal, you do not need to be a tax expert, or you do not need to have come from the mass to realize that this country, things are growing. But what is happening? The tax basket is shrinking, which means there are people who are avoiding paying tax. Go to your home city. Let's take, for example, Eldoret. The buildings that have been put up there are around 15, and each year, around 3 new buildings are coming up. There are all manner of things happening. Does it mean these people don't pay tax? You cannot explain. 2, we need to address another issue. We devolved some things to be taxed by the counties. Are they doing it effectively? That affects how we run this country.
All right. Good question. You wanted to say something? 30 seconds only.
We need to understand something, how economics works, okay? The Kenyan economy year on year has grown between 5.6% and 6.1%. At best, during the Kibaki times, we did up to 8%, okay? That growth becomes the new level upon which the KRA sets a revenue target. So if you look throughout the years, the revenue target has increased every year. Why? Because in 2010, our budget was around 1.2 trillion. Right now, it's above 2 trillion. That expectation is indeed a mark that the amount of money we've been raising through taxes has increased. That does not mean that people have not been paying taxes. So let's not say it has shrunk.
All right, all right. Let's agree to disagree. Let's move on to something else. This week, the 5th devolution conference will be going down in Kakamega County. Very quickly, we don't have a lot of time. We did start late, but let me start with you, Kipchumba. How can you analyze devolution in Kenya 5 years on?
Have
we made gains? Have we adjusted the teething problems? Are we done with that? Are we on the right track?
Tremendously, we have done well. Apart from the little politics here and there, devolution is the real fruits that Kenyans have consumed from the Constitution. It is what has ushered in a new way of thinking. We have seen things we hadn't seen. We have seen potentials. Just the other day, there was a conclusion of the Turkana festival. It has been made bigger and better by devolution. We have seen the country opening up. I think, apart from the teething problems, devolution is really working.
Right.
The other part that must be fixed now is the politics behind devolution. We must move away from the politics of showmanship to the politics of the people in charge of devolution must be managers and not pure politicians.
Right.
And we must also move away from trying to collude devolution and PR stunts. Because most of the time, anytime you get into social media, you realize devolution is more working in social media than is working in real life.
All right. There has also been this issue of delayed disbursement of funds to the counties.
Yeah, I think the one thing you may want to address immediately is at what point you disburse the funds and what percentage. Because I think you look at what the government is disbursing this year, it's around 50% of the current revenue. And that is a slight, I mean, it's a big improvement that 50% of our revenue is going back to the counties. But then you don't know what will happen next year. You cannot be certain of what will happen the year after that. So I think there's need to have a structured way of doing this, so much so that the county governments know when they're going to get the funds and the percentage that they're going to get for purposes of planning. But having said that, I think it's also clear that devolution has had some very fruitful effects at the county level. I cannot say that that means that devolution has been effective because we've had enough thieves at the county level. We've actually devolved corruption from national government to the county government. Now, at the national level, at least we have serious checks and balances. I think at the county level, what we have is mediocrity, impunity, and corruption, like Christmas would say. And focus should be put on ensuring that at the county level, there is enough prudence in terms of fiscal management, not governors and the executive just, using taxpayers' money in projects that they want. And to that extent, you may also want to look at the devolution conference. Why hold a conference that brings all the 47 counties once in a while, yet devolution is at the county level? So I think there's a conversation that we may need to have going forward where we'll have that devolution conference just at the county level, to extend the public participation to a point where the people in Migori talk about how it has worked for them and what they think needs to be done going forward.
All right. Just a smaller correction there, like through the Division of Revenue Act 2018, the counties will get 372 billion. That is 39.8% of the most recently audited revenue. What is your take, Mark?
The devolution has worked, and devolution has a lot of great potential. But over the last few years, actually, I've been researching into devolution that has worked in other countries proper. And I'll cite examples of the United States, Switzerland, and the Republic of Germany. In all of these jurisdictions, what the national government has allowed county governments or federal governments to be able to do is they've been able to control the economic dynamics within their county. And this is how, for example, it happens in Switzerland, where you have a tax, a VAT tax, let's say, of 10% by the government. Then the government allows counties to increase that percentage based on their need, making counties able to compete with each other, meaning that Kiambu County can decide that VAT in Kiambu County will be 1% above the 16% the Kenya government charges. So it's at 17%. While Nairobi can say, because we are big and we have a big economy, control 60%, they can afford to put the VAT at 19%. This makes Kiambu more attractive for a startup family, a startup business, than Nairobi, and that allows counties to be able to compete. One of the things that we need to quickly put in place is have counties competing against each other to get investments, to get people moving into those counties. It should be attractive, for example, for someone to move their business to Turkana because of the tax incentives they will receive there. That is one angle that needs to happen. The second angle that is happening, and I'm really thankful that some governors have thought about this, is for them pulling resources together to have industrial parks, hospitals, and other amenities that can be shared across counties. So they've come up with the development bank in Western Kenya. What that does is you're able to consolidate this money and work on projects as a group of counties. Right. And these are the kind of innovations that are needed. And at the same time, these counties need to offer solutions for each other. For example, Kiambu, Kajiado, and Machakos County should be thinking about this huge population of people who work in Nairobi and live in our counties. How can we attract them to make them move either their businesses or their going concerns into our counties? That's what should happen.
All right, Dismas, a lot of positive things being said, but many governors have been saying devolution has been struggling, saying health, roads, it has been struggling. What is your analysis?
Well, there's been a struggle between national governments and county governments on who should be running what, despite it being spelled out on Schedule 4 on we're supposed to be doing what. So it's been a challenge between national government and county governments. Like, for instance, in the docket of healthcare, it's supposed to be a county function, but some governors would claim that they do not understand why a lot of resources are maintained at Afya House in Nairobi instead of going back to devolution. So those are the challenges, and there's nobody who seems to be addressing them. But when you talk about devolution, on a whole, one would easily say that it's been a success, save for two challenges. When you go back to the counties, on average, most of the counties spend up to 70% of their resources they get from the national government on recurrent expenditure. So essentially funding the motorcades of all those 47 governors, buying newspapers and buying flowers. So a lot of resources goes to recurrent, and it should be the converse. Then number two, we are creating tribal chiefs, because again, when you go to most of those counties, what they've decided to do is to only employ the locals or the natives of that particular county. For instance, if you go, say, to Nyeri, up to 90% of the staffers at the county government would be members of the Kikuyu community. And that's against national cohesion. And there's nobody who is talking about that. Right. And then the last thing, the biggest challenge we're having today is that we've got so many workshops. Like, for instance, this devolution conference. In my view, it's a waste of time and resources. I've got friends in Kisumu and Kakamega. They said the entire day yesterday, there were choppers flying left, right, and center. And you're having the same group of people meeting every day, and then we're expecting different outcomes. Because these governors who are meeting there with the national government, they've been meeting all over. A few days ago, they were in Kwale. Now they're going to be in Kakamega. They're going to be in Kisii. They're going to be in Kisumu. And yet, the person who is supposed to be a beneficiary of that devolution, the poor taxpayer, is never invited to those forums so that they can give them feedback.
Interesting.
Now, you're 7 governors who've been having tea every single day. It's some sort of incest. We don't have public participation in these conferences, and I think it should come to an end.
All right. That very key points there. I wish you... Will you be a keynote speaker in the conference?
I wouldn't be allowed unless Winnie Mandela gives them a signal.
All right, we'll of course be giving our viewers a post-mortem of the devolution conference that is next Sunday. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Sunday edition. We're back shortly. Next, we will be speaking about the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission and the problems bedeviling the Chebukati-led commission ahead of very crucial exercises, including the boundaries review. Don't go too far.